Good morning, Alistair. Let's start with that quite vivid protest that they made outside Parliament. 221 coffins, each symbolically representing a member of Parliament. Is this part of the normal political discourse in Kenya? Does it make an impact?
Well, I wouldn't say it makes an impact. The people were just voicing their opinion on what they felt was very unfair of the MPs in trying to pass very excessive take-home packages once the Parliament closes. So I think with freedom of speech, they were entitled to their demonstration, and it went on. It wasn't violent, and I think it's positive for any democracy to allow the people to speak.
And as you say, as we've said in the news, the President did veto one of the proposals that they were fighting against. The Nairobi Stock Exchange, Alistair, set to launch or encourage, make it easier for small and medium enterprises to list on the stock exchange. What's behind that? Well,
access to the capital markets is important and integral for the growth of any economy. And with Kenya being a relatively small economy, a lot of our workforce is employed in small and medium-sized businesses. However, access to capital for some of these businesses, especially the startups, has been relatively difficult in the past. So the NSE has been working on this for a very long time in order to have an SME segment, or what they're calling the GEMS, Growth Enterprise Market Segment, which will now allow much smaller companies to access capital through the exchange. Whether these stocks will be very tradable or not is another issue, because liquidity could be a constraint in the long term. But having the companies listed will definitely raise their profile and give them new options on how to raise capital. So we're really looking forward to this launch.
And always good to have an acronym like GEMS to express a new project. But one of the problems in South Africa too with access to the exchange in the old days was that it was too complicated, too expensive, difficult, and small companies often didn't have the expertise to deal with investors and put all the governance in place. So they started the Altex, the alternative exchange, which had much easier regulations, much easier to get on, and they allowed sponsors, designated sponsors who would help small companies. So it's not enough just to open the exchange, you actually have to help smaller companies. Are they going to do that?
They are going to do that, and they have, what the NSE did a couple of months ago was to invite advisors, what they're calling now nomads, another acronym.
Yes.
Nominated advisors who are going to be responsible for advising these smaller companies on how to get listed, and pretty much hold their hands until they are listed, and ensure that the process is not painful for them. Because we do have an alternative market segment, but this is going to be a level lower than that.
Okay, well, let's look at a couple of the shares. We talked yesterday about Kenyan and the day before. 52-week high now on heavy demand. That's the power generator. Is this how much is this to do with this particular company? 9.6% rise is good news in any terms. And how much to do with it? How much to do with prospects for the economy?
Well, prospects are generally very positive for Kenya this year. Last year was definitely a good year. We recovered very well from 2011's debacle. So Kenyan, however, in the full year did not, as a share, did not perform very well. I think in the whole of 2012 it was only up about 4.4%. So it's coming off a relatively low base. This year it's already up, I'd say, over 40%. It's a very rapid rise, being driven by a mix of local and foreign investors. And this could be pretty much in anticipation for the company's long-term projects. So people are just trying to price that in and are not very averse to where the price is trading currently. Full year to June, they had an EPS of close to 1 shilling. So on a PE basis, it's still relatively well priced. Question being, will they pay a dividend given all the capex that they need to spend in the coming years? I highly doubt. So definitely not dividend investors going into this. These are probably very long-term type investors.
Now, the Nairobi Stock Exchange has a rule that a share may not fluctuate by more than 10% on a given day in the absence of a material announcement. Does that deter investors? In other words, they say, well, obviously there's going to be interest in this, so we won't even try. In other words, it discourages the fluctuation that it wants to discourage.
Well, I think in the absence of material information, that's actually a very good mechanism in order to secure the interests of investors, because then there's a bit of sobriety the following day, and people are allowed to really absorb the previous day's trading and take decisions calmly, as opposed to allowing open bands, which would see a hell of a lot of fluctuation. And I think it's very well advised for the NSE to maintain that rule in place as our market still continues to develop.
Right, well, the share price was 9.6% up, so not quite hitting that limit. Yep. And then Dreamliner, that's the new Boeing product. Kenyan Airways going ahead with it. I see in New York yesterday, Boeing was down 3%. A couple of safety issues around that aircraft. Now, people are obviously very sensitive about it with airlines.
Yep. Well, KQ has confirmed that they are still going to go ahead with their orders. They're not going to cancel them. And they are not the only airline in the world that has confirmed interest in continuing to proceed with their orders. Because I think the safety issues are not extreme at this point, to the extent that KQ, who has waited for, I think, about 3 years for the delivery of this aircraft, which they believe is going to significantly reduce their expenses. You know, fuel, for one, makes up about 50% of Kenya Airways' direct costs. With the Dreamliners, we are seeing up to 20% decline in fuel consumption. That efficiency is definitely something that Kenya Airways is keen on. They had a difficult year last year, and they're looking for ways in which they can reduce their costs. We had them reducing their staff numbers last year. That's something that's still contentious. But definitely controlling their expenses is going to be the key in maintaining profitability. It was the worst performer on Nairobi last year.
Of course, Boeing itself obviously has to fix up whatever glitches there are, and presumably by the time those orders come through, these things will have been fixed.